to Keep It Moving with Ivan Hunt. Here's your host, Ivan.
Hey, it's me, your man, Ivan Hunt, coming live from Miami, Florida, but we're blasting worldwide on the CTR network. So if this is your first time tuning in to Keep It Moving, what is Keep It Moving all about? It's all about inspiring, motivating, encouraging, empowering people to live a life that's full of purpose, passion, and meaning. And also to help you kind of regain control of your life too. That's the whole meaning. You know, to bring guests on here who can enlighten and share their wisdom and insights on their journey in life, and to hopefully inspire and motivate you as well. So as you know, every week I start off with what I call a little chit chat with me, Ivan. But before I do that, I want to tell you something. I want to share some things with you, and I want to offer you some things also. After this past month, June, I'm blessed, to have over 37,000 subscribers per OSTAT. I think that's a phenomenal number. I also do another podcast on my own and a second one as well. And between those podcasts, well over 1,000 downloads. So if you're interested in sponsoring a show, or if you'd like to have a commercial and advertise on the show, make sure you email me at coach@ivanhunt.com, or you can email me at keepitmoving@ivanhunt.com, because I want to make sure that you get your brand out. We have a platform for you. The second thing is, in my business coaching class that I was taking, Antonio Smith said you need 3 things in order to be a successful entrepreneur. The first one is you need a service. You got to be able to serve and willing to serve people. The other thing is you got to have a product. And then the third thing is you got to have a business system. So I've really been thinking about it. A good friend of mine, his name is Gene Badio. When I first started off, decided to resign from my position and to get into coaching, he said, Ivan, man, that's going to be a hard sell. He said, people are so used to, selling or buying goods, buying tangible products, something they can touch, see, smell, or feel. And he said, but coaching is not quite that way. And I was like, man, he's kind of right. So how in the world do I sell coaching? Because coaching is really an experience. It's something that it's almost like riding a roller coaster ride, really. You can't really touch the ride, so to speak, but it's the experience of the ride. And that's the thrill of coaching. And I'm proud to say that coming soon, the product is here. And not only is there just, the first product is really dealing with decision-making, basic training for decision-making. Now, I don't recall growing up, specifically when I was in school, anybody ever teaching me how to make decisions. Nobody ever taught me how to make a decision. Me learning how to make a decision was really through trial and error. So coming real soon, and my program starts, basic training for making decisions. It's a 6-week program. I'm gonna offer you tangible tools that you can use and implement immediately. It's not just one tool, not 2, not 3, but more than 3 tools that I'm going to offer you within this 6-week program to help you better make decisions. And then shortly after that, I have another program and another product, that's coming up that is going to deal with divorce and men going through divorce, and not just going through divorce, but dealing with child custody cases, dealing with co-parenting issues. I think what makes me uniquely qualified to discuss this topic is the fact that, I am divorced. I've been divorced. I went through a 4-year custody battle. So I have that intimate knowledge of what it's like emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually, from a man's perspective, and what men and our challenges are during those things. So be on the lookout for that product coming out soon. That program will be coming out soon. And if you're interested in the basic training for decision-making program, be sure to email me at coach@ivanhunt. So with that being said, I want to give you a glimpse into what this product and what this program is going to look like and what it can do for you. So we all encounter decisions every day. We all make a choice on how we want to do things every single day. And sometimes maybe that decision is, okay. Hold on. We're still streaming. Don't worry about it. Some decisions is, what are we going to send our kids for school? Do we want to send our kid to a private school? Do we want to send them to a public school? What about financial decisions? Is there an investment or something that you want to make? This program will help you with that also. But I want to talk to you a little bit today about, a tool that you can use right now that can help you if you're encountering a decision. And I call it 1, 2, 3, go, or 1, 2, 3, yes, no. The thing is, look at the situation in which you're encountering and what that situation may be. Like I just said, maybe you're trying to decide if you want to purchase a new home. Maybe you want to try to decide if you want to purchase a new car. Maybe it's a business decision. Maybe it's a career decision. You're thinking about changing jobs or switching careers. What can you do to help you, come to a logical decision that is going to align with who you are and it's going to be in your best interest as well as your family's. So I call it 1, 2, 3, go, or 1, 2, 3, yes, no. And the first one is, think back to another time where you encountered a similar experience. And within that similar experience, what was the outcome? Did you make the right decision? Did you make the wrong decision? What influences were in your life at that time while you was making those decisions? Were you under a lot of stress? Were you working so hard, working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, 6, 7 days a week, having an hour and a half commute one way and an hour and a half commute back on another way. I know somebody who drives almost 2 hours every single day, one way there and 2 hours and 2.5 hours on the way back. So what happened in that situation? What did you use to make those decisions, and did it work? Right? And then you go, why did it work well? What about that decision that you made and the outcome that you got? Why did it work well? What was it about it that made it work? So, for example, my decision to become an entrepreneur and to become a coach, I never really encountered a actual, industry change, but I did encounter several times in my life where I had to make life-changing decisions. And i.e., do I want to, get a divorce, or I want to try to work this crazy thing out? My decision was to get a divorce. Well, what about that decision, helped me come to that? Well, I had to look at some of the things that were good or bad for me. Was this a healthy situation, or was it a toxic situation? Did it align with who I am? So I took those same things and said, and implemented it to my corporate decision. Is this aligned with who I am? What worked, what didn't work? And then use your strengths that you learned from that, right? Because what I learned through the divorce was that I can persevere. What I learned through the divorce was I can overcome challenges and obstacles that most people will break and crumble under. So when it came time for me to make my decision if I was going to pursue coaching and pursue entrepreneurship, I had something that I could fall back on. I had a prior experience that had a successful outcome that I could use and fall back on. So you always look back and say, have I encountered a similar situation before? Yes or no. The second step is, what was the outcome of that situation? What did I learn from that situation? Did I figure out what my strengths were, and what mistakes or what I could have did differently? And then you take those things, which is 3, you take those things and apply to this decision. So I'm offering more tools than just that, but that's just a real quick glimpse. I go in much more detail throughout the program, but I think it's going to be good. So that's kind of my chit chat for the week. And it's about decisions, making decisions. You have a decision every single day, and every day you have a choice. And if you decide that you don't have a choice, well, you just made a decision anyway. So choose you, choose the life that you want, choose the life that you want to create, and choose to be the best version of yourself every single day. It's possible. As my mentor, Les Brown, would say, it's possible. If somebody else can do it, then you can do it. So it's possible. So continue to believe and hope into your future and in yourself, and decide every single day that I'm going to be the best version of me every single day. And there's going to be days where you're going to just want to scream because nothing is going right. But I can assure you, somehow, some way, if you're in alignment and in agreement with who you are at your core, the world, the laws, the universal laws even your religious beliefs would be a contradiction if it didn't work out the way it's supposed to work out for you. It would be an absolute contradiction. So if you have a little bit of faith, as small as a mustard seed, right, we can move mountains. Sometimes the mountains aren't actual rocks. Sometimes the mountain is our own mental blocks and our, excuse me, our lack of faith and our limited belief that we can actually do it. And if you know me, you know what I'm about to say is really going to blow your mind. I saw a quote by Donald Trump, and you'll see it on my social media feed here in probably the next day or two. And he was talking about most people don't think big. They don't dream big. And that's the reason why, and they don't make decisions. They're scared of success. And that's why people like him are able to succeed. That's why he has an advantage, because he's not scared of those things. Now, again, you know me, you know where I stand on certain issues. But the bigger issue there, the bigger message that I got from that was he was brave enough and audacious enough, even really, to think so big that nobody thought anything like that was possible. Now, the majority said no, but that's a whole nother subject. But even in our own life, if you could think big enough, like they used to say, if you shoot for the stars, you'll land on the moon. So you still were in space, right? So the same thing holds true in your life. You know, shoot for the stars. And if you miss, hey, you land in space, you land in the moon, eventually you're going to bump into something, because space is ever expanding with, you know, time is illusion, blah, 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 blah. I won't get all into the esoterical, metaphysical, dimensional consciousness and stuff, yada, yada. But that's my little chit chat for today. Don't be scared to make a decision. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, yes or no. Look back on the past, what worked, and apply those strengths and resources that you learned from that to apply to this current decision that you have to make today, and keep it moving. So with that being said, my guest today is Dr. Teralyn. So I'm going to read a little bit about Dr. Teralyn so you know who we're dealing with. I think you're going to like her. I know I'm going to enjoy this conversation. Licensed therapist, coach, author, and national podcast host, helping you through the shit that scares you naturally. For over 20 years, Dr. Teralyn Sell has been helping individuals and families overcome life obstacles, big and small, through her innovative and ever-evolving approach to overall brain health and emotional well-being through counseling, coaching, and targeted neuro-nutrient therapy. Hey, the brain's a physical organ too, after all. She helps women tackle the all too common symptoms of trying to be everything to everybody. Anxiety, depression, constant stress, feelings of inadequacy. Sound familiar? And transforms those overwhelming feelings into self-assured satisfaction and never-fearlessness, near-fearlessness. In other words, releasing that confident and beautiful badass that lies within all of us. So without further ado, Dr. Teralyn Sell, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I have a question. Am I actually on Facebook Live right now with you? Because
you're on my wall.
I am? Okay, because I don't see it showing up there, so I have no idea what I'm looking like on Facebook Live. So
no, I noticed a little bit of feedback, so I had to cut it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So but you're still streaming live on my wall. So you're still
okay.
good. Yeah.
No problem. Awesome. So I'm really happy to be here because I met you. I actually think so I have a podcast called unpauseyourlife.com, and I think that you were my very first interview as a co-host with Dr. Callie Estes. So
really?
Yes,
really?
Yes.
Right. She was on the show a while back, and we had a great show. We really went in depth into even my own issues about substance abuse, and she was very open and candid about her experiences.
Yeah.
As well. So tell me, how did you two link up? You seem like a odd mix.
We are, which is what makes it awesome, right? Right. She's the yin to my yang, or I'm the yin to her yang. I don't know. It was not even a year ago, actually, that I met her and took a class with the Addictions Academy. And she got to know me and asked me to kind of be part of it. And then I interviewed on her podcast. And we decided that we made kind of a good mix and we should just go forward as co-hosts. So that's kind of how that happened. You know, I think the universe, or whatever you want to call it, puts you in the right place at the right time. And if you don't go for it, then you're going to lose out. So I decided to swing that door wide open and just burst through it. And It's a fearless and badass thing to do. And I felt very privileged that she allowed me to do it and gave me a shot. And so for a long time in my life, like, I felt like I've been sitting in the periphery, like, well, I'll just not shamelessly self-promote. I'll just not, bang my own drum or whatever. That's how I was raised. Like, basically don't tell people that you're good or even awesome, and I've had to overcome that myself, particularly in my private practice. So it was with her encouragement and all the things that just kind of lined up that I was like, you know what? I gotta just do this, I gotta just take this on and go forward. And which has been awesome, because now I get to really share the information that I know about brain health. And so even though my bio said women, I work with men and women, because men and women have different and unique issues, but same brain health stuff goes on often between men and women, especially in recovery or just mental health stuff, so yeah. And so that's, brain health is my passion. I just love it. And my husband said to me this morning, he goes, "Oh man, you're just going to get going and get talking on this, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You can tell you're so passionate about this because you're just talking so much about it lately." And I'm like, "That's because I feel like the door is finally open for me to be able to do that. And I'm going to do it as much as I possibly can." I made a commitment to myself. I turned 49 this year, and I said, before I'm 50, and well, now I got like 6 months left till the big 50. I'm like, before I'm 50, I'm going to like take on this, and I'm just going to do as much as I can before I turn 50. So far I feel like it's been happening. But as you said, the law of attraction says, right, if I don't line it up, if I say, I don't know, I'm scared to do it, but I want to do it, that doesn't line things up. It won't happen. So I'm just really stepping out of fear and getting to it. So,
and it's funny that you even use the term, shamelessly promote yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you heard the early part of the show where I was discussing, how many subscribers and downloads I've gotten so far in a really short period of time, and offered for people to advertise. I don't, that's really counterintuitive to who I am. I've always kind of been low key, kind of in the background, as you said, on the peripheral.
Yeah.
So tell me, explain to me a little bit more about what you do.
What don't I do? No, just kidding. So, right. So I'm a therapist by trade, and I'm in Wisconsin. And it was probably, I would say 5-6 years ago that I had so many people coming to me sicker and sicker, right? So, and more medication piled on top of how they felt. And I started thinking, like, I think they're sick because of all this medication. Number one, it's changing the architecture of your brain. And to me, that's an important distinction. Like, do people really want to change the architecture of their brain, or do they want to give their brain what it needs to function as is, because like drugs and alcohol change the architecture of your brain, poor eating habits change the architecture of your brain, Right. So I really, in true Teralyn Sell fashion, like, I researched the crap out of it. And I just, I started turning my PhD. At that time I was working on my PhD. I started really looking into brain health, really looking into addiction. And so I moved forward in that direction. I also studied happiness. I did my dissertation on the happiness and life satisfaction of maximum security inmates. And guess what? What would you think? That they're happy or unhappy?
Probably a little bit unhappy.
They're actually happy, surprisingly.
Really?
Yeah. It can't, I don't know. I think probably because if you look at like Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, they had all those basics covered. They had food, they had housing, some of them had meaningful jobs within the prison, and so I believe it's because that baseline, there wasn't a lot of stress with that anymore. That would be my theory as to why they scored that they were relatively satisfied, although they were incarcerated. And some of the men I worked with had this idea to be free where they were. And there's actually a book called that, Be Free Where You Are. And they kind of embraced it. Like, if you can't beat them, join them and make something of it. Right. One of the most powerful people I met was somebody, I think I was working in the prison for about, I don't know, maybe a month. And I was just kind of doing a check-in, and he came in and he was so positive and so, and I actually asked him, I'm like, are you getting out soon? Like, because I thought, well, nobody can be this positive if they're getting out. He goes, no, ma'am, I'm serving a life sentence. And I looked at him and I said, how are you doing this? Like, how? And he goes, I just really started getting involved in my community. And his community was the community of prison. And I thought, this is powerful. This is really powerful. Yeah. So anyway, circling back around, also working in the prison, guys were sicker and sicker. And I started reading some journal articles on things like omega-3s, and there's some research out there. There was an article I stumbled upon that said, omega-3s, when they were given to inmates, actually reduced their aggression. And I'm like, well, why aren't we giving these guys omega-3s? Do we really want them in solitary confinement? Do we really want fights? All this stuff. So keep fast forwarding, like I'm just like engrossed in all of this research and studying and things like that. And finally, I actually took a course on what to do about it, right? So I took this course and started applying it to my practice, and it's on amino acid therapy. Uh-huh. And it really changed the way I thought about things. So a lot of depressed people came to me, and it was more like they were dopamine deficient then. So, but if you think about it, a lot of depressed people will go to their physicians, and trust me, I'm not saying don't ever get medication, because I think there is a time and a place for it. But a lot of them would go to their physicians and they would get a prescription for an SSRI, which is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Okay, so now we're targeting serotonin when the problem is dopamine. So what do you do with that? Well, you supplement with L-tyrosine. All right, so where does L-tyrosine come from? It comes from food. It comes from protein sources. If you think about people who have mental health issues or addiction issues, what aren't they doing? Well, they're not eating, period. Oftentimes the drug or alcohol replaces food, right? Or if you have so much anxiety, like your stomach isn't going to tell you it's hungry, because when you're in your fight or flight, your digestion is off, right? Mm-hmm. So those people aren't eating either. So I started thinking, like, we can't think our way out of dopamine deficiency. We can't think our way out of serotonin deficiency. We can't think our way out of anxiety often. And what do therapists typically do? Like cognitive behavioral therapy, so thinking therapy, right? And there's a place for that. But when you're sitting on my couch and your leg is bouncing and your hands are shaking, and one of the first questions I ask is, when is the last time you ate? You'd be surprised at some of these answers. Like, well, I don't know. I had like some chips, or whatever. I'm like, in the last 24 hours, when was the last time you ate? Most people can't even answer that question, So the thing that I do is I have protein bars and I have cheese sticks in my lobby, and I'm like, let's go get something to eat. And you'd be surprised, within 15 minutes, the shaking has calmed, Yeah, that's blood sugar stuff. And so these are basic things. And so my mission is to enlighten people, is to train people, to help people feel better, And because what if we can just offer a little protein snack, and now therapy goes better? Now the experience you have in a therapist's office is better. It's funny because I have had therapists that get all upset because there's snacks in the lobby, and I'm like, what? Well, then you don't get it. Then you're not understanding this yet. Right. So anyway, I don't know if I answered your first question, because I go on a roll and I'm like, this is why I'm so passionate about this stuff, Yeah,
I understand. I the things I'm passionate about too, I get going. I can't shut up.
Yeah.
I don't mean it that in the negative way.
No, I can't shut up because I don't want to, because I feel like we can't shut up talking about this. And go ahead.
Well, so let me ask you a question, because I noticed in your bio that you mentioned ADHD.
Yeah.
So I'm ADHD. I've been diagnosed with bipolar, borderline personality disorder. I've had
everything,
addiction problems, and
you have it all.
Yeah, unfortunately. So what are some tips then to deal with ADHD then from your perspective?
Okay. So same, it's similar stuff. So it also depends if you're medicated for ADHD. Okay. So a lot of, I'll just talk in terms of kids, because I see a lot of kiddos with ADHD or who have been on a stimulant for, you know, since they were 5 or something, and now they're teenagers and they're getting into fights all the time, right? So they're fighting. Well, what happens is over time, stimulant use actually pushes your norepinephrine, which is noradrenaline, really high. And so you're in fight or flight very easily. So these kids could be, you know, playing a video game, and then their sibling comes up and taps them on the shoulder, and next thing you know, they're punching them in their face, you know? So that happens a lot. So one of the things I say is, number one, let's work on getting, I use L-theanine, and L-theanine is an amino acid. It's like a modulator of amino acids. So it'll help bring that norepinephrine down a little bit, and so you're not so quickly in fight or flight. The other thing with kiddos, especially on stimulants, not adults too, by the way, stimulants make it so you don't have much of an appetite again. So if your appetite is low, again, you're not eating. You're not eating. Right. So if you're not eating, you're not making neurotransmitters, right? So again, we go back to food. Make sure you're eating protein every 3 to 4 hours, you know? Yeah. That's my advice.
You know, because I take medicine for it, and I don't eat, you know, and a lot of times, you know, especially if I have my kids with me, you know, if they're home from school or whatever the case may be, or it's a weekend and my wife's not here, I forget to feed them.
because you're not hungry.
Yeah, because I'm not hungry. There's a, right. That alarm doesn't go off. Oh, hey, you're hungry, Ivan. And right. And, you know, and then usually I'll eat dinner, and then if I stay up late enough, then the medicine kind of wears off, and then all of a sudden I'm starved.
Yeah,
it's a bad habit there too. You know,
because when you're starved, you want to grab like sugary or carby foods. You know, because you're starved for energy. When you're in low blood sugar, what happens is your brain will actually produce more adrenaline, which gives you energy for the rest of the day. It also makes you do things you wish you wouldn't have said and done. So you might have a lower fuse with people. You might get into arguments more. As kids, you might fight more. And, you know, so the protein part is super important even when you're not hungry. So I say, you know, go buy a real good ready-made protein shake, not a bad one. I won't say name brands, but not a bad one. So look for low sugar, high protein, and sip on it. You know, start that off in the day. So that's important to maintain blood sugar for you. Also, usually when you're feeding your stomach, you'll start triggering the, you know, that I'm hungry again type thing. So when I think about not feeding the brain, like I think about it as your brain is getting real like, you know, until you're like, oh, I must eat. And then it's like, oh, you know. Right. Do you want to stress your brain like that throughout the day? Do you want your kids' brains to be stressed like that? My answer is no. A stressed out brain is an aging brain, you know, so you'll age faster when you stress your brain out, plain and simple, you know. So I'm almost 50. I don't want to stress my brain out. I don't want to age any faster than I already do.
And I can see where that's where the headaches come from too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because you're almost dehydrating your brain is what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, and if you really think about it, when you get really hungry, like what do you feel like? Like, do you feel like, oh, relaxed, or do you feel like, you know? I feel tense when I'm really hungry. So it's very important. And you know, it's funny because there's all these fad diets and stuff out there, like so I'll talk to people about eating more protein, and they're like, oh, I'm going to gain weight. I'm like, this is okay, but this is not about gaining or losing weight. This is about feeling emotionally better, you know. That's what this is about. And once your body catches on, it starts producing its own neurotransmitters. So then you won't need these supplements anymore, and you might not need to behave this way anymore, you know. So,
well, explain real quick what neurotransmitters are. I think because you're saying, and maybe not everybody really understands what that is, and
sure,
and how it works.
Right. So neurotransmitters, we have a lot of them in our bodies, but there's some basic ones that I look at. They're the chemical messengers in your brain that regulate mood, they regulate libido, they regulate hunger, they regulate a lot of things. So our body produces them through food. All right. So at the top of the chain, before you can make a neurotransmitter like serotonin or dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, which are adrenaline, GABA, glutamate, you have to have food in place at the top. So that's kind of the basic. So different neurotransmitters do different things. Like serotonin to me is like, people go, it's your happy one. I'm like, well, yeah, it's your happy. It's like mood flexibility. Like I'm able to bounce back. I'm not irritable. I'm not reaching for sugary snacks at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for energy. If you have good serotonin, you might not be as like mood prone during the winter months. That's also vitamin D too, but and your sleep, you might stay up later. Your sleep might be hijacked because serotonin then produces melatonin, which helps you sleep. So there's like a chain going on. And so dopamine on the other, I keep hitting my microphone. Dopamine on the other hand has a lot to do with your reward system. So I call it your giddy up, your drive, your focus, your attention, concentration, right? So if you don't have that, you're going to be kind of like blah, you know? GABA and glutamate have to do with a lot with anxiety. So inability to relax or loosen up, you might be GABA deficient. So a lot of the kiddos with ADHD, a lot of it has to do with their dopamine systems because the concentration is off. They don't have that reward, or they've watched so many video games that now they rely on that to give them their reward and their giddy up instead of, in my day, riding your bike down the road and, meeting a friend. Now it's just all online. It's not as rewarding, plus you're shooting people up online. So,
And that carries over into real life too.
Well, it does. We have to find hobbies and things that are rewarding and fulfilling and not chemically altering through a substance or a gambling or pornography. We have to get things, I don't know, in a legitimate way. Right.
So I'm gonna ask more of a personal question on this one.
Go ahead.
So if I've got a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Who's just, but I know her diet is terrible.
Yeah.
That's just an admission on my part. What would be a healthy diet then? If you suspect that a child it is ADHD or is starting to develop certain mood disorders and so forth, or have grown or been exposed to, biologically. What is a healthy diet at a young age then that can help parents?
This is tough. When our kids are babies, we do a really good job of like fruits and vegetables and things like that. But as soon as they get older and finger foods start happening, anyways, I know this in my household, like you reach for soft things like noodles and toast and, all of a sudden those healthy choices take a back seat to softer processed foods, right? So I would say start back then. You're not in that ability to do that anymore, but now try your hardest to reduce processed foods, reduce or eliminate sugar. Gluten is huge. And I know there are different camps out there about gluten, but gluten can be very inflammatory. And so we're not just talking about aches and pains, we're talking about inflammation in the brain too. So reduce gluten and see what happens. And most people go, oh God, well, my kid's diet is like a lot of bread and a lot of pasta and a lot of pizza and, mac and cheese and stuff like that. If I take gluten out, they're not going to eat anything, And so that's tough. So start by eliminating it. I know that's not, everyone's like, take it out. I'm like, but you got to understand with kids, they also have to eat. And if their diet is primarily that, to change it is changing the whole taste bud palette, right? So they'll probably not eat it. So what I've done, I try to think about this, reducing the gluten, exchanging it out for like vegetable noodles or something like that, or like half and half, mix it up until you finally take it all out. And then put in protein sources. good protein sources. So an easy way, and I do this, I hope my kid's not listening because then he'll know my secret. So because he does like mac and cheese sometimes and he makes it himself, he's a teenager. But if he asks me for it, I actually put in a collagen protein powder in there to get him better protein. So he's not just running on carbs, so I try to sneak it in, and you can sneak in protein if you want to into pancakes, but just upgrade your pancake mix to something gluten-free, upgrade some things when you run out of them in the kitchen, upgrade them. Get your kids involved in picking out healthy foods at the grocery store so they know they picked out apples, they picked out fruit, they picked out a vegetable that they like. Get them involved in picking that out instead of just getting the stuff that that they'll eat, bringing it back and expecting them then to know that there's apples in the drawer, and start serving it. So if you serve apples, put a little peanut butter, have a little peanut butter dip for them. Again, we're stabilizing blood sugar, right?
Right.
So I say this, if it's a whole food or healthy fat, you can eat as much of it as you want, especially if you're improving mental health or recovery principles, right? So stick to kind of that. Kids are interesting because they're pretty picky, but we did that, right? Because we keep buying them the same stuff. So that's what they're used to. That's what they're used to tasting, So I had to get my son, a couple of years ago, he got into playing football, and he would get up in the morning and go work out, and he wouldn't eat breakfast because he just wanted to roll out of bed and go. So he's rolling out of bed, he's going to the high school gym, and he has no fuel in his body, right? Mm-hmm. And he's trying to work out, and then he's trying to concentrate in school afterwards. Well, remember when I said when you are in hypoglycemia and your adrenaline kicks in, you might be fighting. It was clockwork, like 3 days in a row, 9:30, he'd get called in because he, pushed a kid or got really mad at them or, whatever. And so I said to him, you're going to have to make a choice. Either you're going to get up and make a protein shake that's fast or make it the night before. I don't care. You're going to do something, or you're not going to be working out in the morning. And I said, and I mean that, because you're not going to have police contact because you're in low blood sugar. How ridiculous is that? Right. So we taught him how to make an easy shake, and he still 3 years later, he's still making them every day for himself. So clearly he's finding a benefit to that. But when you think about kids in particular, even adults, we skip breakfast, we skip lunch. Well, you said you did, right.
I'm lucky if I eat breakfast or lunch.
Right, exactly. So if you think about a kid, when they're used to doing that, they're in low blood sugar, so they're not concentrating during the day. They're argumentative to the teacher. Mm-hmm. I've said to people, do the 3 to 4 hour protein thing. If you're not eating breakfast, you probably ate protein at maybe 5 o'clock the night before. Right. That doesn't fit the 3 to 4 hour model, does it? Mm. It doesn't fit it. So make sure there's a protein snack before bed, protein upon awakening, just small things. That will correct a lot of behavioral problems for kids, and that'll also start regenerating neurotransmitters, right? Because that's what you need protein. But we overlook it, and instead, I want a quick fix. I'm going to go to the doctor and I'm going to pop a pill. Like, well, how about we fix something first?
And I've been reading this book. I started this book called The Aquarian Conspiracy.
No, I have not heard of it. No.
It's kind of like it's really talking about levels of consciousness and awareness, right? And then shifting the overall societal paradigm into more consciousness and holistic approaches to.
You're so deep. I'm like, so you got to take some string cheese and you got to eat it. And you're like, we have a deep conscience. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah.
Well, and the reason why I'm saying it is because, growing up, I don't think I was never told these things. I'm not sure if my parents were even aware of it. Right. So that's why I'm saying that, we're in this transitional period of learning all these other things that, right. That now we have the resources and the tools to actually pass down. And instead of creating or treating problems, ask the question, what's causing the problem? And start there and fixing things. Because I was in healthcare for 11 years and 11, 12 years. And so all I was around was just sickness. And
Yep.
they didn't want to find a cure, because they find a cure, there's no money. So they just continue to treat a problem. Are you part of any advocacy groups targeting things like that just by chance?
I'm part of the Alliance for Mental Health and Addiction Solutions. That would be, they're a really good organization, nonprofit, and they've got tons of articles and things like that that they promote mental health and addiction recovery in this way. And really, if it weren't for the Alliance, I wouldn't be able to talk about all this stuff in the way that I do. Yeah, so that's a really good advocacy group. Unfortunately, I haven't, this sounds so cliche, I haven't had the time to really get involved in the grassroots efforts. You know, I would love to do that.
But you are, that's what you're doing now.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I speak very, very highly of that organization because they've changed so many lives. And I wish more therapists would be on board with this idea that, you know, brain health is not just a thinking error. You know, it's not just a thinking error and a prescription medication. Because I look at prescriptions like, and I've been on antidepressants, and I was prescribed an anti-anxiety medication when the last job that I had before I went into full-time private practice was horrendous. I was having panic attacks every day in the car driving home. No joke. I was crying every day. And so I went to the doctor. I'm like, I feel so terrible. And so she prescribed me an anti-anxiety medication that I took twice, felt worse. And I just said to my husband, I'm like, I need to quit my job. I think that will help, you know?
Right.
And guess what? The moment I made that decision, what happened to me?
Yes.
Exactly. Because I'm like, I could medicate my way through my job and or I could forge my own path and, you know, let everything line up and do its work. And literally within 2 weeks of me ending that job, I had a full-time private practice. It only took 2 weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I was in part-time private practice before that. So I had a small caseload. Within 2 weeks, full. And I was like, wow, universe, thank you.
Yeah.
You did a great job for me.
I'm working towards that now.
Yeah.
Full caseload. Real quick, and we're kind of getting towards the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Most times people are drawn to these types of careers or professions through personal experiences of some sort. So if you don't want to touch the subject, that's fine. But what led you to mental health, nutrition, and addiction? Because those are very, you know, when you start dealing with mental health and addictions, you know, there's usually something, you know, it's not something you just pick out, you know, pick a number or a short straw and that's what you go after.
Right. So I think it was more of a metamorphosis than anything. Prior to this, I owned 3 daycare centers.
Okay.
And I did it for my children so I could still work and earn a living and also provide for other kids. And my kids got a little bit older. They didn't really need it anymore. And I thought to myself, I just need something that's even more fulfilling than this. Like, I've always had this strong desire to really help other people. At that point in my life, well, I had struggled with postpartum depression with my first daughter, did not seek help. And then when my son came around 6 years later, I had it really bad. And that's when I was prescribed the antidepressant for way too long because I couldn't get off of it. And so that would be the second piece of it, is that I knew how hard it was to get off of an antidepressant. And I really soaked myself into helping people figure that piece out as well. And then along in there, my husband is in alcohol recovery himself. And this is, we call it Sober Summer number 26. So that has always been kind of, I don't know, the undercurrent of my life. And it really wasn't until the last 5 years that actually became a thing. I did addiction counseling because that was in my mind too, to help other people like my husband. And also, you know, I really enjoyed helping the underserved in the prison environment. It was a great experience, but I wanted to do more. So it wasn't, anyways, it wasn't a conscious awareness of my own mental health issues until way later. But it was just really a strong desire, and it seems so cliche, to help people on a different level. And I feel like the nutrition and things like that has really done that for people. That's probably been more powerful than any mental health counseling that I've ever done.
It's funny because, you know, I tell my wife, I hate taking the pills now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hate taking my medicine. I really do.
Yep.
When I first started, it was a quality of life issue.
Yeah, right.
More than anything else.
Yep.
You know, at my job, I'd already had that nervous breakdown. You know, much like I said, you know, I was
been there.
Yeah, and I knew it was self-defeating, and so I got on it. My marriage was in shambles and all this other crap, and you know, finally, I guess you somewhat say got stabilized to some extent. You know, I could think logically and clearly and sound decisions, but then it's gotten to a point now where I'm just, you know, I'm tired of feeling dependent on something. That, you know, so here's something when I go, we have Walgreens. I don't know what you have.
Yep, Walgreens.
Yeah, okay. So every time I go pick up my medicine in Walgreens, I sit there and I look at them. So yeah, it's time for me to go see my drug dealer. You know, I just exchanged drug dealers. That's all I did. You know, if I'm going to exchange drug dealers, there's a deeper part of me that wishes I'd have kept my old one. You know, I like the old drugs better than I like the new drugs.
Right.
You know, it is what it is. And so, you know, I find it very fascinating now. And I think it's just that awareness that hey, here's an alternative to what it is I've been doing. I see my own destructive nutritional habits because I won't eat in the morning. Instead of eating, out caffeine intake, right, which suppresses appetite. And then around 10 o'clock, I'll start getting hungry. So I go take my medicine. So I don't eat, you know, because I want to lose weight, because I put on weight, because I've been depressed, because things haven't taken place as fast as I did want to do. Yes, it's like,
sigh, Ivan, you just need to call me. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, I'm glad you're on the show because you open my mind even more to where it's like, okay, I do still have some type of control.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so what message then, what parting message would you like to leave the Keep It Moving family?
I think the message that I'd like to leave is that there is help outside of medication. And we can actually have a very powerful impact on people naturally when we are trained to do it, when we have the right tools to do it, and when we have a little bit of help to do it. And that you don't have to be a slave to your medication forever. And I say that because I had, I'm going to air quote, postpartum depression for 5 years after my son was born, because I couldn't get off the medication. I would get off, I would try, and I would be so sick that I would just go back to my drug dealer and refill the prescription. And so I know what that feels like. And I also know what it feels like to tackle anxiety by making a big life change, you know, instead of medicating. So I want people to know that there are alternatives. These things you're not going to see on a television commercial. Like we get pushed medication on commercials all the time, you know, so you're not going to see this stuff on a commercial. You're going to hear it again in the periphery, you know, but I do think there's more conversation about it. But I just want people to know that there is help outside of medication and there is hope that things can change. So that's pretty much it.
I'm going to recommend this book to you when we get off the interview. And it's like, it's very similar, you know, and I'm kind of going to wrap up the show here. You know, it's very similar to what you were just saying, that, you know, this is not going to be advertised. Right. And so the whole gist of this book, and I'm just starting, but it's really fascinating, is that there's a revolution taking place. And the revolution is an internal revolution.
Yes.
An internal transformation. And again, a heightened level of awareness of alternative approaches and self-healing approaches, if you will. You know, that our body and our mind is so connected to source. You know, you could define source however you choose. Right. But yet still source created universe. So if everything exists within the universe, it also exists within you.
Right, exactly.
And so coming from healthcare on the financial side of things and seeing the money behind it, you know, the thing that really sparked me was my best friend dying of cancer at 39 years old, you know, with an 8-year-old daughter. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, you know, this doesn't make sense. You know, I know how much is being made just at this one location off of research, right? And you really want to tell me that there's not a cure? I can't participate in this anymore. I can't. And I made that decision. You know, it was sort of a value-based decision that you know, I had to get away and I had to do my part now, right? And part of my part is the show and bringing people like you know, Dr. Sell on the show and say, hey, look, people, there's another way.
Yes.
With that being said, how can they contact you?
So I have a website, drteralyn.com, and you can find me on Facebook under Dr. Teralyn, Instagram, Dr. Teralyn. And yeah, so we can probably put my email if anyone wants to get on with email too. And I just had one more thing. So also unpauseyourlife.com is the podcast that Dr. Callie Estes and I co-host. And we look for people doing badass things, you know, that are different. And also I will have a book coming out hopefully by the end of summer, early fall on natural solutions for anxiety. So that should be pretty fun too.
I should get my signed copy in the mail, right?
You will. Yes, absolutely.
You know, and you know, it's fascinating. You know, one of my goals has always been to write a book. And you know, I
know a guy, by the way. I can hook you up with that.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. You know, but I just finished a program, an outline for a program. And I'm starting to finally put it together, you know, creating that product, you know, because I was mentioning earlier, you know, selling coaching is an experience, and it's hard for people to grasp.
It is.
You know, the experience of coaching because there's not a tangible product attached to it.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm really thrilled because the program is called Basic Training Decision Making, you know, because I'm former military. I'm just a veteran. Basic training just makes sense to me. Basic training decision making. I think the next one, and I'm hoping to start that program by the end of September. You know, so if you're interested in early joining the program, email me at coach@ivanhunt.com. And if you're interested in being on the show, keep it moving at ivanhunt.com. See, I make everything simple. It's just me, self-promotion, shamelessly promoting myself.
Love it.
Yes. And, you know, I want to thank Dr. Teralyn Sell for being on the show. I've had the pleasure of speaking with her actually on her podcast and really had a good conversation. And what we talked about on that show was completely different than what we talked about on this show. So if you get a chance, you know, you can find that show on my website actually at ivanhunt.com. See how this works? You know, I got about a minute and a half. We have, you know, my opening commentary was about decisions. You know, our society is programmed, has allowed us to be programmed to have decisions made for us. And I challenge you to buck the establishment.
Yes.
You know,
rock on.
Yeah, that's it. You know, I challenge you to go against the grain. I challenge you to be an independent thinker and be able to make independent decisions, independent of systematic control and processes. Learn who you are at your basis and at your core. The more you learn about yourself, really, the more aligned you become with Source, with God, with Buddha, Allah, whatever, the more aligned you're going to become. And the more aligned you become, the more at peace you will become. And the more at peace you will become, the more joy you will experience. And the more joy you will experience, the more love you will share and spread throughout the world. So without further ado, this is your man, Ivan Hunt, coming live from Miami, Florida. This is on the Keep It Moving show, baby. Peace.